Hey everyone, Turd Flinging Monkey, how you doing? A quick heads up regarding this video. This is going to go into politics by necessity. I'm going to be discussing human nature, which flavors everything from politics to economics to relationships. I simply can't ignore politics, and the best sources in regards to this subject are political sources. So again, if you're offended by politics and think that politics have no place in any discussion regarding MGTOW, I invite you to click that little X in the upper right hand corner. After a conversation in the comment section of my last video with Dr. Random or Cam, a fairly prominent MRA and the cartoonist for the Honey Badgers, I think I've identified the major point of contention between MRAs and MGTOW, and it is a question of nature versus nurture. The men's rights activists are optimists that believe that mankind, and specifically women in this case, are naturally good and virtuous, that it is primarily due to indoctrination and perverse government incentives that have caused women to embrace the tenets if not the label of feminism, and become hypergamous and misandric. They are not constrained by their biology, but are free to become whatever they want, and it is their environment, specifically our Marxist feminist society, that is the problem. Let's call this the unconstrained vision. Men going their own way, and I don't presume to speak for all MGTOW, or even a majority of MGTOW, but I do personally feel that this is truer than it's not. Believe that human nature, and specifically female nature, is inherently limiting, that humans are inherently and irredeemably selfish and flawed by their nature, and that this nature is fixed. Any system designed to create good outcomes must acknowledge and work within the limitations and constraints of human nature. Let's call this the constrained vision. Now I'm going to cite Dr. Thomas Sowell, and although he specializes in economics and politics, I'm going to explain how these principles are entirely relatable to the question of female nature, and indeed human nature as a whole. I'm linking to a video from Liberty Pen, which contains an abridged version of an interview from Dr. Sowell from the show Uncommon Knowledge of the Hoover Institution. It's only 10 minutes long, and I highly suggest you watch it in order to get a better understanding of these concepts before we continue our discussion. I want to focus on one particular quote from the end of the video, and from Thomas Sowell's book, A Conflict of Visions. Quote, "The constrained vision, war is seen as originating in human nature and being constrained by institutions. Those with the unconstrained vision tend to explain war in terms of either misunderstandings or of hostile or paranoid emotions raised to such a pitch as to override rationality." Now simply replace the word war with the word hypergamy or misandry or gynocentrism, you can clearly see the divide between the constrained and unconstrained visions in the men's rights movement, and within men going their own way. Luckily, although the debate still rages to this day regarding the constrained and unconstrained visions of human nature in the realms of politics, economics, and obviously relationships, we need not solely focus on male-female relationships to determine which vision is true. When talking about human nature, we should expect, and indeed find, ample evidence of which vision comes closest to reality all around us and throughout history. When studying history, wars are a central focus of historians. So let us examine war not only because the materials are much more abundant, but because the differences become far more stark when human lives are on the line. Now I'm going to link to another video based on the Conflict of Visions by Bill Whittle. Now those of you who've seen my League of Shadows video may be surprised that I'm plugging Bill Whittle after cussing him out in my previous video. Well, like I said in my previous video, I have great respect for the man, and I have no problem supporting and recommending someone I agree with most of the time, while reserving the right to disagree with him on other issues. If someone is highly knowledgeable, but you disagree with 10% of what they say, they are still worth listening to 90% of the time in my opinion. Anyway, Bill Whittle goes into the difference between the American and French revolutions because each was built on opposite visions. The American Revolution and subsequent Constitution was built on the constrained vision of human nature. This is why there was a separation of powers built into the government, so as to keep a flawed, selfish douchebag from seizing power and running over the rest of us. These checks and balances have been largely removed or weakened over the last 100 years, starting with the administration of Woodrow Wilson, but that's not really important to this topic. My point is that the American system of government from 1781 to about 1913 was rooted in the constrained vision. The French Revolution was built on the unconstrained vision. Since human nature was not the problem, the root cause must be the institutions and people that are keeping mankind from attaining peace, equality, virtue, and happiness. In order to wipe the slate clean, a lot of people would have to die. It was up to the enlightened to guide the bloodshed. 40,000 people were executed during the French Revolution. Now, what was the result of the unconstrained vision? After 40,000 people were beheaded and all the nobles, priests, and wealthy merchants were dead, in 1791 the French people set up a constitutional monarchy, which lasted less than a year. In 1792 the French abolished the monarchy and set up a republic, which went bankrupt under a series of wars with its neighbors and became unpopular with the people. Napoleon Bonaparte, an accomplished military leader, seized power in 1804 and re-established a hereditary monarchy with himself as emperor. Bonaparte was defeated at Waterloo in 1814, and relatives of the old French monarchy returned in what is known as the Bourbon Restoration until 1830, where conflicts of succession led to infighting until 1883, when republics, and the plural is intentional as several different republic governments replaced each other over the years, finally replaced the monarchy. The current system of government in France is known as the Fifth Republic because it's the fifth time the French have created a new constitution. This government was established in 1958 and replaced the previous parliamentary system with a semi-presidential system like in America, and also established additional checks and balances like America in 1971. Thus, the unconstrained vision of France, with its nearly uninterrupted series of wars, revolutions, usurpations, and failure after failure after failure, finally gave way to the constrained vision of checks and balances like that of America 180 years later in 1971. When you compare the constrained vision of America from 1781 to 1913 with the unconstrained vision of France from 1791 to 1971, you can clearly see success on one hand and failure on the other hand. I could have used other historical examples of the unconstrained vision, such as the Bolsheviks in Russia, the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, or even Fidel Castro's revolution in Cuba. I chose France to compare to America because both of these countries began at approximately the same time, so we can examine their success or failure as more of a product of their internal beliefs and not externalities. What does all of this have to do with MGTOW and men's rights, you might be asking? Well, if human nature is fixed, then the men's rights movement is futile on two grounds. First, they think that awareness and education can override human nature. This is the unconstrained vision, which we've proven is a failure. Now, many of them are starting to realize this and have begun to change course and try to establish the institutions that constrained female nature in the past, namely traditionalism. However, this is where the men's movement fails again, because that ship has sailed. The genie's out of the bottle, the toothpaste is out of the tube. Insert your own cliche. Women are never going to voluntarily go back to being subordinate to men in a democratic society where they are 51% of the voting population. And no amount of facts, reason, evidence, or logic will ever convince women to go against their instincts, which are to acquire resources from men. To demonstrate this, let's turn to how awareness has affected obesity. The government has made it very easy for people to know what's healthy and what's not. They are even mandating that restaurants post calorie information so that people can make informed choices. It makes sense. Give people the information, and they'll do what's in their best interest, right? Well, no. People will still eat fatty fat cakes and get morbidly obese no matter how many labels you put on the food. 68.5% of Americans are overweight, with about 35% being obese and an estimated 6.6% being morbidly obese, and all of these numbers are going up. Obviously, awareness isn't enough to override biology regarding food. Why does anyone think that it will be enough to override biology regarding sex and reproduction? Now, having said that human nature is fixed, doesn't that go against what I and other MGTOW videos have said regarding overcoming your biology as men? Well, no, and I'll explain why. Neuroplasticity reinforces or weakens instincts. This ability of the brain to change allows us to develop in different ways, directed by our recognition of reward and punishment as it relates to our survival. There is a reason that men's rights and MGTOW have only appeared in the last decade and not 50 to 100 years ago. Yes, there were famous men like Nikola Tesla who were lifelong bachelors, but not an organized anti-marriage movement, so why now? Well, the overreach of feminist laws that have quote-unquote liberated women and have had the byproduct of enslaving men have caused this. The reward-punishment instinct of the brain has been triggered, and we as men are realizing that relationships with women literally threaten our survival. That's the red pill in a nutshell. Our neuroplasticity has weakened our instinct to pair bond with a female, at least for those who've discovered the red pill, That's why we make these videos and try to wake men up. Now, why doesn't this work for women? It's because their survival isn't being threatened. They're in fact benefiting from the current system, and it works in line with their own instincts, so what reason would they have to question, let alone reform it? Why would women ever change their behavior when they're in control? Go ahead and argue with them, it won't accomplish anything. They won't listen to you because they don't have to listen to you. You might as well try to convince someone who's morbidly obese to go on a diet. They know they're fat, and they know it's not healthy, but they aren't going to change. You know what might change them? Impending death. If someone's overweight and suffers a heart attack, and they realize that they are literally going to die if they don't get their shit together, they might find a bit of self-control that they couldn't find before. Now, right now, women have no reason to change their hypergamous, gynocentric, and misandric ways as long as they're benefiting them and they're the majority. You know what might change them? Impending death. A collapse of the welfare state and our gynocentric Western culture is going to be like a heart attack for that obese person. They then might realize that they need men far more than men need them, and they will adapt or they will die, just like in nature. Arguing with feminists is like teaching a dog turd to read. The only rational way forward is to wake men up, because the real threat isn't feminism. It's repeating the same mistakes of the French Revolution and wasting another 200 years thinking that the unconstrained vision can be tried again and that this time it will work. It won't. It never has, and it never will. Only a system that acknowledges and works within the limits of human nature has a chance of success. But again, we can't reform the current system because women can vote, and they'll never allow it. All we can do is wait for it all to come crashing down. I realize that this is not a positive message. I wish there was some way to rationally argue with a woman and convince her to stop being a cunt. I think married men throughout history have tried to solve this puzzle and come up empty. I'm going to link to one final video from Stardust called Why Are You Still Arguing with Women and Feminists? Link in the description. That's it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. I realize I covered a lot of different topics, and I may have to expand on one or more of these concepts in future videos, but let me know what you think, and if you think I should expand on any of the topics I covered. If you have any other comments, questions, or emotional outbursts, let me know in the comments section. Please like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.